Last week, Zoltan UI testing updates. Dave showed his new website. I talked about new fluid features. Yep, I remember which ones. And that was it. Today. Demos. Does anyone have demos? So Thierry, I assume, will demo the transliteration feature? Or not? Or not. You can say or not.
Oh, no.
Nope, no transliteration feature. We'll see. Topics. So Thierry, I'm sure, has very interesting topics, complex ones. Nope, we'll see. So Thierry wanted to say something.
No, nope. Yep.
Okay, good.
Nope.
David has a demo. David, do you have a teaser title for your demo?
Yeah, it's for statically typed routing. URL creation.
So static what?
Statically typed URL creation.
I didn't understand. You want to type it? Thank you. Suspense. Statically typed. Okay. Statically typed UI creation. Interesting. Okay. So let's start with status here. Portrait 1, dates, nothing new, portrait core. Oh, we lost Gabor. Gabor is back. So last week was tentative. Here we saw that and we saw that. Then Revert jQuery UI 1.13. Yes, so apparently this version of jQuery UI is breaking the nested sortable plugin that we are using to do drag and dropping in some pages like menu items, taxonomy terms. So reverting it to the previous version fixes it. Probably the long-term solution is to remove nested sortable plugin, which hasn't been maintained for a while. There are already some other solutions that we use across the admin, so one of them will be used. So this is fixing some issues that people filed since we upgraded to 1.13. Don't enable file content definition feature by default. That's a big change. Big change. It's not breaking because any existing site will keep the same features, but for the new sites, this feature is not enabled by default anymore. So this feature is replacing the default behavior to store content type definitions in the database by one that stores the content type definitions in a file in the app data folder. So apparently most users prefer to store their content file definitions in the database by default. You can still enable that if you prefer your content definitions to be file-based. For instance, if you want them in your source control management, like Git, but by default they will be in database. So if you have a distributed team or site, then you might want it to be in database by default. Then the change should be very easy because it's just, so there is some documentation update and the change is just to remove the feature in the default themes or default templates. Recipes. Async write-read of the request body is mandatory. So I did a change a few weeks ago when updating Fluid, I think. I'm like, hey, this method is async, let's use the async. But no, oh, this method is not async, let's not use async. There is a read to end, but no, it has to be async when you write to the body. So jQuery made an update. This is a behavior from ASP.NET. It's toggleable, but we use the default in this case. So it has to be async writes on the body. Async reads in this case. Okay. And since it is called from JavaScript, it's made synchronous. Oh, there is a typo here. Here too. I can see that. Preserve contained content item IDs. So this one is a huge change because it's reacting to a previously huge change that changed how the widgets or the blocks in the flow editor and the backpart editor are handled dynamically. And there were some issues with some of the widgets. So jQuery is fixing it. It's an issue with the way the hierarchy of widgets is built and preserved. So it's just some JavaScript changes. Nothing in the database, so that's fine. It's just an editor was broken. But jQuery fixed it. Then the updates for all the libraries, mkdocs, Cypress, Jint. There was an important bug actually on this one. Due to S prima, there was, some regular expressions could Stack Overflow the engine, I think, in this case. So that's why it's updated. And this one, there are new features, I think, new features. Why is it updated releases? 226 move blank and empty in the grammar. Yes, there was a bug for this one. And I will actually give a refresher on that. I don't know how to. What's the issue? Is it saying fixes whatever? No, it's not saying it's fixing whatever. There is an issue with blank and empty. What is this test? Assign A equals blank. Oh, I see. I see. It's because the model has precedence over the scoped properties, and blank and empty were defined as scoped properties on the root scope. So if you were using a custom options, that must be it. If you're using custom option, it might have lost these values. So that's why I moved them in the language directly. So you can't overwrite them. If you write an identifier that is empty or blank, it will say this is the empty value. You can't override it or lose them. That's how it's done. Okay. So that's interesting in the parser. Now we say, okay, is the string, is it the true value, the false value, or is it the empty or blank identifiers? And then you see just these text. So easy to change. And now you can't config that. So that's the first update. And this one, lots of bug fixes, null reference exception when setting a null value in the context. Okay. Parse error when passing arguments to an empty tag. So if you have an empty tag, a custom empty tag, and you pass something after, then it will show you an error instead of being no up. Fix render tag local context, render tag local context. So the render tag had a bug with it could override the local context, I think, in the for loops. Allow false argument. The default filter didn't have the allow false argument, which is a new one from Shopify. Ensure the render tag is followed by a string. The render tag, which is like the include, can only accept a template as a string expression. The include tag can accept a variable, but the render tag only handles strings. And I think that this is the reason why Shopify added the render tag. They wanted to make optimizations for this tag. And because it was a dynamic expression before, it had to be evaluated. So they could not cache which template to cache. They didn't know because each evaluation of the tag could return a different template to load. And with this render tag, what they can do, because it's a string, it's read-only, it's immutable, they know that a specific tag will always read the same template name. So they are actually caching the template with the tag. But Free doesn't care because it's already caching the templates by the evaluation. So that's not a big improvement. It's just to respect the Shopify language. And fix for loop scopes. The for loop scopes could I found an issue here. This one is super interesting. I mean, it's super weird. It's like the JavaScript of Liquid, meaning nobody expects that to work this way. So if you have a variable named C, it has a value. And then you have an iterator in the lower for loop that is C. This is a different one than this one. And when you write it, this is the one from your for loop. Or is it? Yes. And when you assign it, this is the one in your for loop. It's not the same C here. So that's the idea. Is that what I'm saying? 1, 2, 3, 4. And after that, yes, no, but when you assign it, no, when you assign it, it's the one from the outer scope. But when you read it, it's the one from the loop. So that's something, some notion of conflict between the for variable and your outer scope variable. And yeah, this is what it's testing. 1, 2, 3, so it should be. Oh, and another thing that it's fixing is that when a string is enumerated or in a loop, it should not return 1, 2, 3. The enumeration of a string is only the value of the string, 1, 2, 3. So instead of having, if you render twice the variable here, instead of, you could imagine like it's 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. No, there is only a single value, which is 1, 2, 3. So it will be 1, 2, 3, and then again 1, 2, 3. Okay. So that's the two fixes for the for loops. Very special cases. Compliance is hard. So that's the changes in Fluid for Fluid. And updating KDocs material again, here and there. Questions, comments? No transit iteration demo, no question. So demo from David. Sotiris.
One question. After the loop, what is the value of C?
What was before the loop? That's interesting. No, what if it's defined? Oh, that's super interesting. Yeah. So let's look at that.
Not in string, the normal one.
This one. No, not this one. How is this? This one. So assign C, it's 4. So when you assign it, it's assigning it to the parent one, 4. So I'm testing it back with this one, right?
Yep. Okay.
So it's like what you, when you write, you're actually writing to the outer context. But when you use the C variable, the local context has a custom value for C. And it's funny because I don't know how I found this one. I think I mentioned that last week. I use a lot Liquid.js, which is a Liquid JavaScript implementation of Liquid. So it's super useful for me to verify the behavior because they also try to be super compliant in everything. And you see how they behave 1, 2, 3, 4. And before this, the bug fix, C was probably even wrong. I don't remember. Maybe it was right, but when you did assign C, you could change that, which is not safe. And
so
then,
if you remove the assign for, C.
No, it's taking it into account, you see? So that is evaluated for every loop, and it's modifying this one every time.
I see, okay.
So that's why here, writing C, it's 1 and then 2 and then 3. But every time we assign, it doesn't change the iterator. It's just changing the main variable here. And then when we display it there, which is after the end of the loop, it's displaying 4. Okay. If I remove that. Okay, so the C after the loop is 4 because it was assigned there. It was assigned 3 times, but doesn't matter. It was still. Okay. If I call it D, there is no ambiguity. Okay. C is not defined at that point because it's after the iterator. Okay. So I use Liquid.js, but they have some bugs sometimes. Okay, because compliance is hard. So they also have some bugs. In this case, they behave the same. So how I do that now, I install Ruby, and I might have it there somewhere. I don't have it here, but yeah, I installed Shopify, or maybe on another machine. I installed Shopify on a different machine, and Shopify, I mean Liquid from the GitHub repository, and I run the code directly to be sure that that is exactly what they want to output, to be sure it's compliant, so that all the implementations in JavaScript, in Python, in Ruby, in everything, in .NET, behave the same, and there is no special cases. But yeah, that's the thing here. Cool. Are you good, Soteris? Do you use Liquid a lot?
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
Only Liquid, I think.
Yeah, so it's funny because there is someone who asks from the community that asks a lot of questions also about the design decisions and everything, and something that there are things that are missing in Liquid, right? So I find an issue actually in Shopify. Let me show you what I found. And I tried because before finding the issue, I was like, maybe it works this way, and I find these issues. So last time I updated Liquid, I showed you, I think last week, there is this new tag, the Liquid tag in Liquid, where you can write multiple tags in the same tag. Okay, so that's super useful, like if you don't want to repeat the curly brace %. Here you can say one statement, another statement, and yet another statement. And you can do it with 4 loops and everything. So you don't have to, like this one can be done something like that. Liquid assign, I can remove that there. and I can remove that there. So you see, for this kind of things, it's super nice because you don't need to repeat yourself. Go see, assign. So this kind of things, this is super nice. By the way, Liquid.js doesn't understand yet the liquid type. I found an issue on the report. Deal with that eventually. So this is how it could be written now with the liquid type.
Okay, super.
So this is nice. But what I want to be able to, and you have lots of blocks, I'm sure, that are more complex than that, and that will be easier to read this way because it's more programmatical. It's easier for us developers to read it, right? It's less noise with all these curly braces. And also you can do something like this because echo is part of, this is equivalent. That and that is the same thing. Don't look on the right. Liquid.js doesn't support these new tags. It's new. But Fluid does, so you can use that today because Antoine updated the library, I'm not sure. So you can do that today. But what I want to be able to do is, and you always have that, I think I mentioned that last time, when you have a div class and you want to inject a class in Liquid based on some constraint, you would do something like if a equals 2, for instance, and then you will be like my class, and then you will be like and if.
Yeah, I normally do it, you know, before the div, so the if is.
Yeah, you could do it with and
Yeah.
define and assign a variable, but yeah, but usually that's what you want to do, right? To inject that here. And why isn't so? With the new syntax, what I'd like to be able to do is something like that. If a equals 2, echo my class. See, I don't have to close, open again. So that is nicer.
Yeah, this is nice.
But
Not yet.
but apparently, so I'm like, from my test, it seems like a new line is required for each tag. Like you need a new line there, so you don't need a new line there, but you need a new line for the echo and a new line for the end if. And after that, you don't need a new line. So that's the smallest thing I could get on their Ruby implementation, their official implementation. So I found an issue to say maybe you could improve the language to support it this way, that you don't have to go on the new line. Okay, and then you could do that, but today you can't. So in Fluid, I didn't do that, but I have a PR that does that. So I have a PR, do not merge, that allows that. It's just changing the, so you see now there is a test that says you can do something like that. If, then do that, else, then do that, and if, okay? So that's doable. I did that in Fluid. It's not hard in Fluid because the way the parser works, I can just say, oh, you might just want to look for a space and not the caret return or something like that. So yeah, that's something I'd like to be able to do, but it's not supported in Shopify. So I don't want to support it yet because you will write something that might not work in another interpreter. That is not official. So yeah, so that's something that I'd like to be able to write here. So that's a limitation of the language. Some limitations also that are common is that I will take an example from someone who filed an issue. If you do something like 1, 2, 3, and you do something like reverse, let's say you have, yeah, no, so the idea is that when you have, what was the example? Something like person. Oh, okay. Imagine you have products, okay? And you want to take the first one, and from the first one, you want to take the, or you say like reverse, and then you say, let's say first, and then you want to take the name of the first product. How do you do the dot name? How do you do that? Well, you have to do that. You have to assign it first. You always have to create variables. And do right? So it's kind of sad that you always have to go through assignments. So yeah, sometimes you want to write something like, oops.
Yeah, otherwise you need to create a filter.
Or you could
create a name, yes.
Yeah, but no, it's even worse than, so there is no parenthesis in, so I had some ideas, but I mean, it's in the language. So the first solution I suggested, as you said, is a filter. You can do something like map, and then do name. So I need to check if map accepts a single value, but you could do something like that. Because map will project an object with just the property name that you want. So it might then return you an array of, so that might work actually. Oh, I'm in Liquid.js, so if I do products, if I do one, what does it say? So this is not supported. Yeah, so that works, okay? 3, I'm taking the first one of the reverse, so that works. So this is a way to do that, but it's not obvious that you want to access the name property, you have to map to something, but that works. So people want usually to have the parentheses, but it's not supported in Liquid, so something like that. First, actually, .name. So that's something you want to write, but there is no parentheses. Or I was thinking maybe we want something like a custom operator. So there is a filter that will go through a function as the input, but we could imagine there is something like, I don't know, something like that. I think it's a syntax actually in some language. I don't remember which one. Or something like that, you know, like, oh, access the name property of whatever this is. Or just say if there is a space and a dot name, just dot means it's a property without even that. Okay, that would be interesting to support that. And I assume it doesn't work actually. Let me maybe, you know, sometimes it's like it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't make it says unexpected dot name token. So it doesn't work in Liquid.js, so I don't expect it works. But yeah, there are some things like this. And something also that you can't do is define your custom reusable functions. Like maybe you will do that a lot of times. So do you have to write custom filter for that? Or would it be easier to have something like filter mine or ABC, okay? And then say, be able to say like something like that.
Maybe
I
a filter that does JSON path.
or if it, well, this is different. JSON path is a valid suggestion, but what I'm talking about here is if you want to create custom filters that you reuse. You can't do that today in the language. Maybe there should be a way to do that in the language, or they should create a tag that supports that. It's doable in free. We can customize it. What you're suggesting is to have something that does JSON path, which is a different comment. It's like how to solve that issue. I was talking here about reusing the same thing again and again. But yes, to solve the previous thing, yeah, we could also have something like JSON path. It's also an extension that can be done, yes. Or another thing that we miss is supporting JSON data directly, like something you could do like 1, 2, 3. Like you want to type an array value and you want to do reverse, okay? you can't type something like that. The only values you can type are strings, integers, and boolean.
Yeah, this is the big limitation, using JSON as objects. Aside.
Yeah, so what we can do is, so today there is a JSON filter. We have.
But this is a string, right?
Yes, but there is a JSON parse, I think. Do we have a JSON parse, or do we not have a JSON parse? It's not official. That's
yeah.
Well, there is none. Maybe in Orchard there is one, but there is none in Free. But yes, you can always write something like this. It's a hack because, okay, you have a string, you parse it, and then you can do something. But I think we have that in Orchard. Or if not, we could. I mean, it's Orchard. In Free, I don't want to do that because I don't want to deviate from the official Free language, or it has to be opt-in, like, okay, I want to add the JSON parse. We could provide it and it has to be added in the configuration, like add JSON parse, add JSON support, or whatever. The JSON one is there for sure. I'm not sure it's there in Liquid.js actually. Let's see. And if I say 1, 2, 3, split. Oh, it works. 1, 2, 3. So what is the it works. So there is a JSON filter that saves JSON. It's also in Free, but there is no JSON parse to get your position. At least that would be a solution. But
yeah, but this is string. You cannot iterate on this, I think.
You cannot what?
If you have a property, you cannot access it with dot. It's a string, or not?
This is a string, but then the end result of that, yes, I see what you mean. It's a property. I see. What you want is an object, right? A deserialization. Yeah. What you want is a deserialization. So ideally what you want in this case is 1, 2, 3, like, oh, type JSON. Okay, this is what you want to see. Like values equal something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Or be able to do something like JSON parse, not parse, that will return the object. So that maybe it's there in Orchard. I don't remember. Did anyone comment? No. Yeah. So maybe it's there also in Orchard, but it can be done, right? Nobody is preventing anyone from adding a filter like that. That will convert a string to the object representation. So that will help. But it's not in the Liquid language or the default tags that are officially served by the Liquid language. Yeah. That will be a solution. So yeah, so a limitation that you can't type pure objects, that you can't access functions, that you don't have grouping, but it's also simpler because you don't have all these things. If you want all these things in a language, you need to use Scriben. So Scriben is a parser by Alexandre Mutel that supports Liquid and also extension to the language, like what I just talked about, custom functions, stuff, lots of stuff. Okay, so it's a Liquid++.
Okay, nice.
And yeah, Scriben. And if we didn't have, so when we started with Liquid, I didn't know there was this parser. We discovered it after we made Fluid. So, but I'm sure we would have used this one instead of making a new one if we had known. Now Fluid is better in terms of Liquid. It's faster, it's more compliant, but this one is interesting because it has custom things. Look at that. You can have dotted filters. I'm sure there is also parentheses. There is custom functions, so that's super nice. Small work. So that's good. So look at that. We were using .liquid at first, then we made Fluid because of performance, and then we discovered that. We definitely skipped handlebars or mustache, which are two other types of templates, because they were very limited. But that was it. So in the PHP world, or even Node, there are other related ones like Ninja 2. I shouldn't type stuff like that on, but there is a Ninja template language. Nunjuk template. So this one is also very similar to Liquid, but they went, so all the things I told that were missing, they just said, okay, let's add them and call it Nunjuks. I think it's based on the Ninja language, that's what it's called, Nunjuks. But it's lots of extensions to the Liquid syntax, actually. So far, everything looks the same, right? But so you see exactly the same as Liquid. Async support directly in the for each, it's crazy. Macros, like I just mentioned with custom filters, for instance. So with a special format here to define what are the variable names, the argument names, and then what it should make. So yeah, macros. Then this is something we can add to Feed as extensions also. You see functions with parentheses. It has lots of features that Liquid doesn't have. So this is the same. Oh, it supports arrays and dictionaries. Interesting. And parentheses. Yeah, it supports everything. Beautiful. Yep. So super. Oh, and let's go back to this meeting, and we said David has a demo. So David, your turn. You can share your screen.
May I ask something?
Yeah.
Since we are talking, sorry, David. So I had an idea. I don't know if it's the right time, but why, if a user could create a theme based on Liquid templates?
Okay, so let's talk about it after David's demo.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
We can. A little low, but that was fine.
Okay. Let me see if I can move it closer. Is this better or worse?
It's the same. Don't worry. We'll do with that.
Okay.
I will let you know if it's going worse.
Okay, anyway, here I am. So my demo is about typed route, which is a new extension method and then a class for replicating this feature in ASP.NET, but using the expressions from LINQ, and this way it's fully statically typed. So as you can see in the bottom left corner, the results, it generates an identical URL, works the same, so there is no loss of functionality, but it is, well, for one, it's nicer to read, and it works with all kinds of refactoring. So in fact, just before this meeting, I made this little page to show it, and initially it was called Home Controller, and then renamed it, and then this got stuck as Home, but this renamed itself just fine. So that's one advantage, and you don't have to type out the parameter names either. So if those change, that's again useful, and it automatically serializes dates and numbers as well.
That's cool. I have a question.
And okay, go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt you, actually. I thought you were done with, so go on.
Oh, just a few more small things. So at any rate, this is an extension method for that uses orchard helper or HTTP context directly to be able to work with either asynchronous or synchronous actions. And additionally, there is a version that uses that works with our UI testing framework that uses where is it? At any rate, that there's this extension method. It's called go-to. Yeah. In the UI test context, that lets us go directly. For example, it's used in these methods that we have in built in for signing in directly and stuff like that. So you can use it for everything if you include that module, that project into your UI test project as well. And additionally, it also works with, no, that's not the right. This is the right control. So it works with the route attribute and the admin attribute. So it automatically prepends the admin to it with route parameters and like these types of arguments. Other types it just turns into strings. So that may be useful, but I don't think it's. I don't think you would use this if you want complex arguments passed, because you would probably serialize it to JSON anyway, or put it in the post context. And I guess now I'm done.
Okay, now I have the questions. So I'm surprised that the tag helper is not providing IntelliSense for that or validating. Could the tag helper provide that?
There is some extent of support both in Visual Studio and so, Rider. For example, in Rider, if you want to, it provides some IntelliSense. If start to type, then it offers it, but it doesn't update. And yeah, I believe the same is for Visual Studio.
In this case, when you type ASP-controller, does it show you the types? Does it autocomplete, for instance, the types? So, and when you type T, okay, it shows typed routes because it's a controller. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, okay, because it shows you all the controllers here. So that's a good thing. And if you type something wrong, does it like typed route 2? Does it fail?
This, well, I don't know. Nope. It just inserts it. You can see it in the corner. Just the gibberish gets inserted. Okay. So if this is just in the IDE, and it's basically handled pretty uncritically by the tag helper.
Okay, and
which is something that simply cannot happen in this version.
Interesting. Also, it reminds me of a project that was doing that for the earlier versions of MVC, I think. Maybe Bertrand remembers, but there's a guy named Fabrice Marguerite, a French one, who made a library like this. I never used it, but I think he made something like that. He will generate all the potential.
I have seen similar libraries, but mainly for all the ASP.NET. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention is that it autofills the area as well. Of course, okay. Right now you don't need it, but but for a different module, it's useful. And what it does is it actually looks up the assembly's attribute for module name.
That's cool. Can you show us the code of the?
Yes, just a moment. It is. Okay, so it's pretty large. So what happens here is that we have a basic controller that you can just fill it by giving manually the type and the method info, and then we have a static method for creating it from an expression where you provide the controller using generics and the expression as a lambda. And then when that happens, we do some expression tree traversal to get the actual method call and the method parameters from the method info.
Okay, and maybe you want to cache that, because if you're might be costly to render the URL every time then, and you do the same job all the time. Like if you cache by type and method, like controller action, that might be a good idea to cache that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Looks nice. Those who do Razor should like it. And then going back to Soteri's suggestion. Topics. Soteris has the best topics all the time. I tried to find the thing from Fabrice Marguerite. This is his webpage, but I couldn't find it. So maybe it's there, but I don't see it. Whatever. So Soteris had a question about what if users could create a theme from the admin. I love this question. Issues. I have no idea where I will find it. Maybe Antoine, who's the owner of all the issues and knows everywhere, when we are looking for something, knows every time where to find it. Did I search for theme? We have an issue or two about that, with suggestions about how to do that. So the idea is that first we could support editing assets, for instance, in the assets management. So if you want to have CSS files, for instance, we could have them in the assets library and make them editable, like any text file. That would be a first, something that will allow kind of customizing themes, because you could just reference a file from your assets in your theme or in your shapes. Then we also mentioned being able to do these things as a custom page. I can't find it extensively. No, maybe, yeah, that's documentation. I'm sure we've talked about it. Upload theme packages. We mentioned that we can't do that either for themes, same thing.
Adwan has a bit in the chat.
Oh, we don't need a live theme. Okay, thank you. You see, told you. We don't need to search, we ask Antoine. So, do we have related issues for that? We must have related issues, because I think.
But this is different, I think.
Also, what do you think then?
Oh
yeah, no, this is different.
Elementor, yes. Okay. So to be honest, I have tried to create a theme as simple as it takes, with a layout only, and everything else is lives in the admin templates, in the templates, and on top of this, I have created some different layouts with Liquid and CDN CSS and JS, and it goes fine. So why should I have to create an empty theme, let's say, from code in order to have all the Liquid templates in my inside the admin?
Yeah, so you still, what you did say is that you still have a gesture to do in the project to create a new theme. And you're like, no, I just want to go in the admin and say, create a new theme, and here are my files. I see. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could have some concept like this. So a module usually is code-based, is to add code, but a theme could just be static assets. So you might want to have something that is virtual, that is a theme and doesn't require any code, just files.
There is another one.
Thank you. I know there was another one. Oh. So let's see all the comments. What did I say? We should reuse media assets page to upload. In this way, underwater storage progress contributes to those two. Unify custom not for the. Yeah, so if we are based on the media assets or something related, all the assets will be shared across all the nodes that you deploy. The idea is that if you update a file on your pod system, then you want all of your servers to serve the same file. So that's also interesting because you don't have to redeploy something. You can just edit from the admin. Then you go even further because you say, no, I want to create a theme. Do you want to be able to create multiple themes, or do you want to be able to, because today if you just create templates, you just update the current theme, but you might want to be able to create custom themes, even with inheritance, like, okay, I will just inherit the current theme and define custom files, like override some existing files. That might be interesting. I mean, yeah, that's totally possible. I think that would be interesting to be able to edit everything on the admin. It's kind of the same feature as media assets. You need to be able to edit stuff also, which media assets doesn't do, and it could do that. Maybe we should have custom folders in the media assets that represent a theme, and then be able to harvest them dynamically.
So in the www root folder, now we, in order to make a site, you need to upload the well-known folder with some manifest, the Google search HTML to identify that it's you. If you create a CSS and JS folder there, www root, you can have your CSS and JS there. So you have to upload them and reference.
So without
being coupled.
Yeah, so you want to be able to, so today you can do that, right, with the media assets?
Yeah.
You can do your robots, your Google stuff and everything. I think you can.
I usually upload them to the www root folder, but yeah, maybe.
But can you do that today with the media assets, or is it, so I don't remember. So when we have a site like foo.com, if I want to access, if I do /robots.txt, will it also check inside the media folder? Or is there a media pattern?
Yeah, this is a media pattern there, yes, it is. So that's why I uploaded it to the www root folder.
Yeah, that's a different question, but I'm wondering if we could also handle without any media, like custom static file provider that will also look up in dynamic data like assets media. And yes, we can, I'm sure. So yeah, that's a different concern, but there might be also a way a reason to do that. A custom module that will map the root folder. Maybe part of this module that today we have like user-based files. We might also want a section for the root folder that you can upload custom files like robots or Google things or whatever. Might be interesting to do that, and then also be able to bind a folder to a theme, and like in the themes folder, and every time you create a folder there, it will be a theme, and you could have a manifest file inside, and we could harvest the theme dynamically. Dynamically is hard because there are shapes, so they have to be done on startup. But we could have a button to say reload or restart the tenant, and when you restart the tenant, it will find the new files. Yeah, there are ways to do that. So yeah, so you have two issues here, and yeah, you should. What is the second one? Yeah, you should comment on that with your ideas and your limitations. Separate folder, okay. We already have also a feature that is related to that, the tenant file provider, where we can provide custom files per tenant. So it's the same idea, like how can we extend the current tenant with different files, different locations for files, either on the file system in different folders or dynamically in the database. So yeah, so I think the answer is in the two issues, and that's not a bad idea because people have expressed their will to have that. So, but first you need to finish transliteration. And then after you can start working on this feature, right?
Yep. Okay, I agree. I think that, yeah, if you should wait for this, for me, I mean, it will take some time.
Maybe, but I mean, or if you wait for someone else to do it, it might take you some time also. So that's how it works. You need to find someone that needs it before you, and then it's done. Or
yeah,
maybe,
I know.
Maybe some other people have done that. Maybe Lombic has something like that. Maybe HPlay has something like that. They have lots of modules, so maybe they have something like that. I have to check, or to comment on that to trigger some interest for some people to write something like this. I'm sure that would be beneficial for many. Yeah. Should not be that hard also. The edition part, yeah, I don't know, because we also already have editors for anything like template shapes and everything. So but with all the things we have already, you should be able to copy paste most of the feature, or just reuse all the components we have to build that. It should not be that hard. Or you pay someone to do it. That's how it works also. Lots of consultants around to build it. Get the money and ask people to do it. You can ask Antoine, you can ask Lombic, you can ask Chantieri. They will all do that.
Yeah.
Ask Dave. Dave also can do that. Sure.
It's always time versus cost.
Money. If you have all the money you want, you can have that. Pay someone to do it. Done. Boom. Tell your customers, pay for that, and you will get it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the topic. Any other questions, comments? I think we are good then. Meeting still on for next week and Thursday, so not yet too close to holidays to skip the meeting. So see you on Thursday for the triage or next Tuesday for the meeting. Thanks everyone.